Past players, past legends, past legends.
That we had in 85 and the side we had in 88, we would have been lucky to have half the players still in that 88 side. So the fact that we're able to keep performing, and I still believe getting to grand finals takes an amazing amount of effort.
Oh, bloody oath it does.
Unfortunately, like I've played in 10, and if I had have won 5, I'd be very happy now, and I've only won 3. And I still feel very privileged that I got to play in 10 grand finals, and winning 3 was pretty special. But whoever says that you might as well not if you're not going to win the grand final, you might as well not make the grand final.
That's
crap.
bullshit.
So
it's garbage.
It's the biggest game that you'll play that year. And you've given yourself a chance to win a premiership. And there's only 2 sides that can say that at the end of any year. So,
now, what's also your memories here? And I want you to go on a few different angles here and go from however you like. So your son, Matthew, and with his, so being blind, Matthew, and you go in whatever way you want to go there, Super. But he developed an absolute huge cult following when he was on KG, and KG I thought was brilliant with him. And what's your memories of that? And you would have been pretty bloody proud of him, and so you should be. Back then,
absolutely. Matthew, I think he was 8 years old when he started first in the show.
Yeah.
And he had this remarkable memory. Could remember. You talk about Wally Miller. You asked Matthew what was the score in round 13 of 1986, and he'd be able to just recite what the scores were. So he had this unique ability with numbers, and he used to do his footy tips for KG every Friday. And I still remember they changed the time. I think he used to be on at 10 to 5. Or
that's it. Yep.
But then they changed it for some reason to 20 past 5, and there was a group of nuns that actually rang up and said, "This is not fair. You've changed the time. We can't listen to it. That's when we have our dinner or whatever." So, so they actually changed him back to 10 to 5.
Right.
So
I do remember that.
He had a remarkable following.
It was huge.
The only thing is, I think he finished when he was 14, and it was only because that his voice had started to change. So that novelty factor was gone. You're listening to more of an older
adult.
Young adult with voices changed. So so he dropped out. But he had an amazing time doing that, and it was very famous. I remember going on a sports show, and I think it was Peter Marker and Graham Campbell, and I think Kim Dillon. And it was sort of, they asked him a few, what's 24 goals, 34.
Yeah, that's right.
He just recited it. And then Kim Dillon, as a throw a line, said 47 goals, 49, and Matthew's just gone back with the answer.
I do remember that.
Stunning.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Matthew's still going well. He's been married for...
he's up in Darwin, isn't he?
Exactly. But he lives up in Darwin. They bought an apartment in Darwin. They've been up there about 5 years and they love it. Barracks for Nightcliff up there, who has done reasonably well. I think they played in a couple of premierships a couple of years ago, and he's always loved, for some reason, he's always loved the Northern Territory. He's always loved the weather up there, loved the thunderstorms, the noise and the atmosphere around thunderstorms, and so they've made a life up there, which is fantastic.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and of course, how long were you at Coke for too? Then, Super.
30 years.
Yes, yeah. I knew you were virtually you were an institution in terms of that regard. Yeah.
Well, I started at 29 and worked until I was 60, so or 59.
Of course, the other point too now, unfortunately, we are going to have to cover now because I think it is a huge credit. Because not too many people can be premiership players and be then also a premiership chairman sort of thing.
I haven't been a premiership chairman.
So were you premiership? What do you? What are you now in terms of what's your official position?
I'm vice president
Vice
now.
president.
So
Weren't you president?
no, a long story, but
I've just promoted you, so go on. Don't
I'll-
ruin a
It's
good
done.
story.
It's
Don't
done.
ruin a good story with facts,
so
Super.
Nick Chidwidden was
Yes.
pestering me for 2 or 3 years to take over from him as president.
Yep.
But I was working for a charity, Youth Opportunities, and
Yep.
I felt that, and I was CEO there, and I didn't feel it was the right fit for me to be president of the footy club and CEO of a charity, because they cross over in so many ways.
Yep.
You know, you're asking the same people to sponsor Glenelg as you're asking them to donate to your charity. And I just said to Chiggy, you've got to wait until I retire from Youth Opportunities, which I did in 2019. So I retired in end of June 19, and so Chiggy said, well, you're ready to take over? And I said, no, I'm not taking over. We're halfway through the year. The club's going really well. You need to be there till the end of 19, which he was. He ended up being the president of the Premiership Club. So I took over in 19.
Well, I'm talking this year. This year?
Yeah, no, I'll get to this year.
Okay, sorry.
He's building it up, mate.
Yeah,
building
that's
it
right.
up.
Sorry,
So 20, 21, 22, I was president.
Right.
So we played in the grand final in 21. 20, I think we finished third or fourth, and 22 we finished in the final somewhere as well. And then my wife and I were going to the UK in 23 for 7 weeks. And I thought being away 7 weeks during the footy season is probably a bit of a stretch. So I stepped down as president in 23, and David Whelan took over in 23. So he's been president for 2 years for 2 premierships. So he's going pretty well.
Yeah, he's going all right. Yeah.
And I still haven't got one. Not that it means a lot. The fact that I was on the board, part of the board we've got a footy exec, which I love being part of. I have a great relationship with the coach and a number of the players, so it's all good. And the fact that I wasn't president, I don't think means a lot in terms of we've still done well, and I'm still absolutely proud of what we've been able to achieve. We are now in the most successful period of Glenelg Footy Club. Which is fantastic. And 6 guys joined me this year.
Yeah, it's 3 times.
3 times. And I hope they knock me off next year and go to 4.
Yeah.
Mate, we're obviously talking about the most successful period, but just before the successful period, the Glenelg Footy Club went through some pretty tough times. We've got to talk about that as part of the Glenelg story and the success. Can you just let us in and give us some insight as to how dire it actually came?
I wasn't actually involved directly with the club there. I certainly helped out where I could with Chiggy asked me to be, I think Corngy and I sort of promoted the fact that Glenelg were maybe going to close the doors. Can we raise some money? And we did. And let me say that I think it's really important when you look at footy clubs. You've got to have a good board, a good CEO, a good footy manager, a good coach. It just doesn't all. You can't just have a good coach and hope you're going to win premiership. It's got to be. You've got to have a strong club. And I think Nick Chidwidden and David Whelan, particularly those two during that 2000 and around 2014 when it was all happening, helped drag Glenelg out of dire straits. And whilst we're not a super rich club, it's a struggle to, as most clubs find, to make ends meet each year. So winning premierships certainly helps, and being successful certainly helps. We've got a great supporter base. We've got strong sponsors. So the club's going pretty well, but it's still every year you've got to have a look at your budget and how you're going. You certainly can't waste money. So it was a struggle. As I said, I think we've got a fantastic board now. We've got a good CEO. We've got a footy manager that probably goes under the radar a fair bit, Paul Sandico, who's did a wonderful job at Sturt, but being a Glenelg boy at heart, took the opportunity to come back to Glenelg and has done a wonderful job. Recruiting players. And it's interesting. If you get everything right, you become a destination club where people want to play for you. And it's fabulous being able to recruit guys that want to play because Glenelg's a strong club to play at. That's good. And it's sort of, Nord have been a very successful side. Central's had their golden period, and this is our real opportunity now for our golden period. And we've just got to keep working on the next 2 or 3 years and just make sure we're in the finals, competing, to get in the grand final, and you see what happens. Pretty exciting times.
Now, Peter, where I'd spoken to you briefly before, it was actually at John Robinson's funeral and wake.
Yeah,
now,
that's right. Yeah.
In terms of that, John Robinson, it's remarkable, Peter, that he is one of only 4 players in SANFL football history to play in premierships in all 4 grades in terms of league, reserves, junior Colts and senior Colts. And that was
Port Adelaide.
Yeah, and that was at Port Adelaide. And then back then when you then move to that club. To say he got immersed and that in Glenelg, and fanatical Glenelg, he's played for Glenelg, but he was chairman of selectors, on committee. So he's actually a member of the Glenelg. He's a Glenelg Hall of Fame member as well, which obviously Peter is. An absolute great at Glenelg. Yeah. And look, Glenelg in terms of Liam McBean led the thing there with the players, and there was 20-odd players there, and I certainly know on behalf of the Robinson family that, from Mark, etc. And I know Mark and you and I were talking a fair bit that day, but it meant a fair bit to Mark in terms of just how Glenelg ran that day and the involvement, and full credit. And I don't know Liam McBean, but he showed his leadership that day. And let's be honest, something which was, and I know you had a ridiculous week. I think you had 3 funerals yourself that week. Because I think there was Nick. There was one of the Chigwidden family as well. And so it was a ridiculous week, but, Glenelg were fantastic that day. And, full credit. I know I'm speaking.
Yeah, well, John Robinson was a fantastic servant at Glenelg over many, many years. Whatever credit he got, he certainly deserved it. We have got a special group of players at Glenelg at the moment. We might lose a couple, this year that, Snooky's going to retire, who's been probably our best player in the last 10 years, but we've still got a very strong leadership group, and it's, amazing if you can keep that majority of that leadership group together, add a couple of new ones, a couple drop off, and just maintain that momentum. It's so hard to get in the position that we're happy to be in now, but it's easy to lose it as well. So it's really important that we just keep striving for more success.
Righto, in terms of the normal way here, Peter.
We'd like to finish off.
Let's go through the best players you played with and against. And I admit I will be asking you a Nord Ruckman how he features there as well. So, go, Soap.
Well, best players I've played with, as I mentioned earlier, Stephen Kernahan's is right up there. Peter Marker was my first captain, unbelievable player.
Great player.
And there's so many good players. It's hard to single them out. Cornsey, obviously. Kimmy Hodgman, another great player. Tony McGuinness for a couple of years. Chris McDermott for a long period of time. Outstanding. So Tony Hall, a brief period, fantastic grand final in '86. We didn't see the best of Tony Hall. No. He had a couple of knee operations that he could have been a great. Like I think the first year he went to Hawthorn, he was dominating and finished quite high. The Brownlow votes he got before he was injured, it would have been possibly leading the Brownlow medal at that stage. So he's an outstanding player. So we've had a lot having played 18 years, it's sort of a fair few to cover.
Yes.
So they were some of the best I played with. Yeah.
And against?
Against, you want me to throw some Nord players in?
I think I've always had the Bear and that. Yep.
Yeah, Neil Button was a absolutely solid player. It didn't have the brilliance of some players, but just consistently good, always strong, always tough at the footy, always tough to beat. So he was up there with the very best ruckman. Davies was the most talented ruckman that I played against. He could. His hands were good. He was strong. He was only short for a ruckman, but got an amazing value out of the height that he did have. So he was right up there. Mickey Redden later in my career, great player. So that and I don't like singling out too many because they're all tough at times. Like I was lucky enough to play against Peter Darley early in my career.
Yeah.
He was just finishing though, and he had crook ankles, and he was starting to struggle. But I had seen him play. Like when I was in Victoria, I watched South Australia play Victoria on the TV when I was in Warrnambool, and I saw this South Australian ruckman, Peter Darley, absolutely taking up to the Victorian ruckman. And I still remember watching Peter Darley and remembering his name when I was in Victoria. I had no idea I'd end up in South Australia. But Peter Darley's name's certainly stuck in.
Now, I admit, I've actually had a message from a mate while we're doing this, and because he's then asking, who did you play for? Did you play much footy in Warrnambool? He's asking you. He's from Warrnambool, so he's asking in that regard.
I played for a side called St John's under 15s.
Right.
And I was a mascot at South Warrnambool, so I barracked for South Warrnambool. Right. I'd actually signed to play in the under 18s in 1969, but that's when we left and moved to Adelaide. So I'd signed, and Alistair Lord was just coming to coach South Warrnambool that following year. So 69, he ended up coaching. And we had South Warrnambool had Cowboy Neil played for South Warrnambool. We had a very young Phil Stevens played, who then went to Geelong. We had Kenny Newland, who didn't play for South Warrnambool, but he was from Allensford. He went to play for Geelong. So I had some Donnie Brooks, Ray Salt. They were both ended up playing for Fitzroy because Fitzroy was zoning started. I'm not sure what year, but I think a couple of years before I'd left Warrnambool and moved out. So. Yeah, but Hampden League was probably the strongest league in Victoria. They used to have country championships, and Hampden League always used to feature in those championships. So it was a pretty strong league.
Yep.
All right, mate, we've got one last question to get you out of here
this
on.
This must be a hard one.
Yep. Mate, it's not very often that we get to interview somebody that's played over 400 games, 423 to be exact, or 467. Yep.
I'm 467, Camp. Yep.
Mate, I'm sure there's a couple of highlights in those 400 games. Do you want to just run through a couple of them just to wind us up on?
Yeah.
Three pretty bloody obvious ones.
Yep. Yeah. Obviously the premierships, and I probably treasure 86 more than the others. Like 73, I was only a kid. Didn't appreciate it. 85, enormous pressure after playing in 5 losing grand finals. So winning 85, while it was fantastic, was as much a relief. We finally won one. So 86, having won 85, the pressure didn't seem as great. So I got more enjoyment of playing in 86 than I did from 85.
Yep,
so
that makes sense.
So that highlights, my 400th game was certainly a big highlight. Footy at Glenelg Oval against West Torrens, and we won that game. And it was interesting, getting to run out with my 2 of my sons. And that was special. And running around with the players, some of the players had tears in their eyes. So it was a big event. Getting to 400, and people ask me how you did it, and I've got no idea. I just kept playing every year, and it just add up.
It was a huge event in South Australian footy, and I do think the bit of running out with your two boys just made it, that big tick, and probably because Matthew was so well known as well. It did add to it. Yeah.
No, it's a big day.
That's not taking away from your other son as well. Yeah.
No, big day and special day. So they were highlights. Look, there's been so many. Glenelg Football Club's been a highlight for me, and to still be involved. I love SANFL footy. I still would prefer to be at Glenelg Oval watching Glenelg play. I probably went to 3 or 4 AFL games, and I absolutely admire the physical attributes, the ability to perform under pressure, and AFL footy. But for me, it's become a bit prescriptive. I think it's overcoached. Incredible skills these footballers have got, and they run rings around some of the players that we played with and against. But it's because they're professional. They get to train, so many hours a week. But it's taken footy to a different level. But sometimes not as enjoyable as watching Nord play or Glenelg play. I still love that old community type thing, and we're lucky at Glenelg, and I say this in respect of all the other clubs. Most of Glenelg supporters live in Glenelg.
I think that's a fair point.
What I mean?
Actually, I do agree with that.
So it's a great community. Nord are spread out, obviously. Sturt are a bit spread out.
I think that's a fair point. Yeah.
So it's been a great club, and I couldn't be more thankful of being associated with Glenelg Footy Clubs. It's been great.
I greatly appreciate it, Super.
Thank you, mate.
Really value your time. And,
no worries.
Yeah, look forward to catching up as well. I do want to tell you one story off air, so you will laugh.
Hang about.
Yeah.
All right. See you, Pete.
Thank
See
you, mate.
Malcolm.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
See you. Bye.
Liking this podcast? Please like, rate, and subscribe.